Hi everyone, welcome back to 33 Founders. I'm so excited that you're with us today because I'm here with Chieh Huang, the co-founder and CEO of Box. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Jenna. Thanks everyone for listening to me over the next few minutes, and I promise not to bore you.
So what I want to get started with actually is I know that you guys came in wanting to apply gaming to e-commerce on the phone.
That's right.
And this weekend, as I was toying around with Box, I was literally sitting on the couch with my dad and exclaiming, like out loud, being like, oh my God, because I was noticing huge difference, like $7 off plastic bags. And I want to know, Chieh, what are you doing that I am so excited that I'm screaming of joy that plastic bags are cheaper?
Well, I think it's not so much, we say the G word, so we don't like to gamify anything, but what we definitely tried to do was actually take the elements of gaming and how kind of you progress through a game or progress through an app and bring that into the mobile shopping experience. Because 2 years ago when we first started the app, and definitely 18 months ago when we first started as a service, a lot of the mobile commerce apps out there just they were pretty far behind. And so basically now we look at how you progress through the app. And so in fact, the vast majority of our customers never use the search bar. And so as you're discovering, we're actually trying to place kind of items that you may like kind of in certain selective places to get you to keep scrolling. And so that's a little bit of kind of how we try to bring gaming elements into a discovery experience.
It's working.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's funny because another important fact was that it is a discovery experience where we don't purport to have everything under the sun. We have very select brands, ones that we can get great savings on, and ones that we trust as customers ourselves. If it doesn't fit either of those criteria, and the third criteria is if it's not the larger size or the larger format of it, if it falls short on any three criteria, then we actually won't sell that item.
So what made you think we're going to start an online version of bulk shopping without membership fees?
It's as most great things in life, it starts in suburban New Jersey. So I grew up in Jersey, and basically growing up, I went with my parents to the Price Club. I know I'm dating myself, but Costco didn't even wasn't in our area yet, so it was the Price Club, and so I would have friends always laugh at me over the large format of things that we'd have at our house. But I knew it was the cheapest way to get stuff that you would use a lot of. Or stuff that you would use every day. But later on, as I kind of had my own family and moved into Manhattan, I no longer had the physical means to get there. I didn't have a car anymore. And so we tried to kind of solve that problem first, those who didn't have the physical means. But what we found is that we started spreading very fast in suburban and rural areas as well. And so now it's not only if you don't have the physical means, but if you don't have the time or the patience as well. And so that was, that's how we tried to solve a very simple problem, and it became a little more complex problem, but with a much larger opportunity.
One of the things you mentioned was the decision to not have every product under the sun.
Yeah.
And that really plays a role in the experience. I can even say scrolling through within the first minute, I was like, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I didn't have to go and search. Why is that so important to you guys?
So if you think about traditional online retail, basically we've been trained as customers of desktop retail to spearfish. You find a great deal on one item, you buy that item, and you get it shipped to you, and you don't buy anything else. It's a great model for a lot of merchandise, but it fundamentally does not work in consumer packaged goods because the margin is so thin. So if you think about no matter what retailer you are, even if you're Walmart, if you ship one roll of toilet paper to an end consumer, it doesn't matter how you ship it to them, that's going to be a margin negative order. And so it is fundamental to us because as you discover, you're also adding more to cart. And so we have, customers trust us because we do pick the brands and we curate the merchandise. And so as they kind of go through the app, they're adding more and more to cart. And usually our cart sizes are pretty large. And it's the only way that you can build a kind of a sustainable retailer in this sector, in our opinion.
What have you found that people buy most?
Paper products are obviously huge. So you have your simple toilet papers, paper towels, diapers. But also you'd be surprised, we sell a lot of, we were talking about it before. I'm sorry, we don't have cacao powder, but we have cacao nibs. And we have a lot of kind of different organic foods and products as well.
Which is really refreshing.
Yeah, because if you think about it, do you know, like actually most people, I don't know why you would know. Actually, most people don't know, but 6 out of 10 brick and mortar club customers, whether it's Sam's Club, BJ's, or Costco, they're boomers or seniors. So 60% of their base.
I
And
can
so
see that because that's where my grandparents go.
fair enough. Hopefully we can get them, if they have a smartphone, hopefully you can help them install the app. But basically, you contrast that with kind of our audience, the vast majority being 25 to 44. And so that flows all the way down to obviously the touch points, primarily app, but also down to what merchandise we carry. So a lot of stuff you won't traditionally find in brick and mortar clubs, you'll find on Unboxed.
Well, when you guys first started out, you thought it was going to be largely targeted to my brother, who was going to be ordering
Yeah,
protein bars and protein powder. But it turns
that's
out
right.
that it's targeted to my mom, who doesn't want to go to Costco on the weekends. What did you do when you realized you needed to shift your business model?
So one, I stopped listening to my own needs and started listening to the needs of our customers. And so that was probably the biggest fundamental and positive shift that we had early on in the formation of our company. I obviously had a need at that time in my life for certain items. And so I realized that, yeah, I was somewhat solving a problem for myself, but there was a larger audience who didn't shop like I did. And so, as soon as we started letting the data speak and letting kind of our customers speak, the assortment got way better. And so that's it's never easy to admit that you are way off or way wrong. But in this case, I will gladly admit I was way wrong, and I will also gladly admit that some folks that we brought on as professional merchandisers do a better job than I do of selecting the products we sell.
It lends right into a great insight I learned from Anthony at Squarespace in the first round review when he talked about the difference between growing a business or growing a sustainable product. You just mentioned that you want Box to be here in 15 years, not just 2. Tell me how you got the latter.
I think, um, I think, for me, I look at kind of just retail in general, right? We didn't come into this business thinking that it was going to be easy and that we would only be in it for a few years. All the major retailers have had a long slog over literally between 10, 20, look at some retailers, 100 years, right? Especially if you go into Europe, hundreds of years. And so really kind of recognizing that early on and kind of building for that, I think was pretty important. And that's how I really recognized it. It's just pattern recognition of, it's not for every business, of course, but in our business of building a retailer, even if it is fundamentally driven by technology, you have to be in it for the long haul. Because there's just so many things to learn, and customer preference is always shifting. So if you're thinking short term, you're not going to be around very long in the retail world.
When you talk about customer preference, and so like for you guys, your target audience is moms who don't want to go to Costco on the weekend. How do you understand? You're not a mom, so you don't want to go to Costco.
I'm a dad.
You're a dad.
Close enough.
How do you understand what a mother feels like who doesn't want to go to Costco on the weekend?
So step number one of understanding that is hire a mom who has that same problem and speak to lots of moms who have similar problems. So we try to do a lot of focus groups and talking to our customers, soliciting feedback. We read every single email that comes through when people have kind of feedback about selection or any feedback about the app, whether positive or negative. But in general, our merchandising team is, especially the baby assortment, is driven by a very wonderful mom who has 2 children herself. So she knows what she wants to carry and she knows what she doesn't want to carry.
Good deal. So I want to shift gears for a couple of minutes and chat about your journey building Box so far. From starting out, launching in New York and New Jersey to expanding nationwide by just the end of the year, take me through a couple of the big milestones of the last couple of years.
Ooh, interesting. So, I've never been asked that. So it's a good question. So I think the first big milestone was when we were just trialing the service for just a few states on the East Coast, and seeing that it was resonating very well in suburban and rural areas of those states. As much so, maybe even more so than the urban areas. That was a huge milestone for us because then it basically opened up the map of where we should and where we could expand to. That we weren't just an urban kind of experience. So that was a pretty big milestone. Obviously, also along the way, there's been a few key hires, whether it because they brought kind of prepackaged experience with them, or whether it's because, for example, hiring one of our merchandisers, Melissa, bringing her experience as a mom and kind of injecting that into the app. So that's obviously pretty that was pretty transformative. But in general, chronologically, I would say also after we knew it could be a big business because it was time and patience, solving as well, and also the fundraising rounds along the way. Not so much because of the cash. Yeah, of course, that was great for the business because we could do bigger fulfillment centers and carry even better assortment. But more importantly, we got some pretty awesome people around the table. So now on our cap table, you'll find everyone from Josh Koppelman from First Round Capital. This last round, we have Yuri Milner, to Jerry Yang from Yahoo, to even Peter Thiel from Founders Fund. So we can call upon a pretty awesome group of folks to really bounce ideas off of and to keep us honest and keep us focused at times.
Okay, you brought up two super important points I can't wait to talk about.
Okay, all right.
First, you talked about the individuals that you brought on who have really helped your team in terms of advisors. When do you call them?
Usually Sunday nights, like crying in the shower fully clothed. I call them. Kidding. But there are a few Sunday night conversations because you're getting ready for the week. And so those are usually just to steady the ship and to see like what the priorities should be in the coming weeks and months. But I generally call them, luckily I can call them whenever I need anything at all, whether it's an introduction, whether it's for them to sniff check something we're working on, or whether it's just to talk to someone for 15 minutes. And a lot of the folks that are on our board, in fact, most of them have been operators themselves. And so when you talk to them, how did you do it? Or how did you think about these seminal moments in your business? They've been very, very helpful.
How did you select the individuals to bring onto your board?
Well, it's kind of an interesting process. You have to find the folks that first you want to work with, and then ones that want to work with you, because sometimes you have those are the best marriages, right? And so you find oftentimes it's not, you don't have a match on one side or the other, whether we really want to work with someone and they're not totally kind of sold on mobile commerce or bullish on it, or vice versa. Like there's folks that are very bullish about commerce that we thought didn't bring a lot to the table to be able to help us. And so that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's just us selecting. It's kind of a dating process, if you will.
So another part of the dating process in the startup world is hiring.
Yep.
And you mentioned bringing on some people that really changed the way you guys were operating. When did you know? Because I know at the end of 2013, you guys were only 10 people, right?
Yep, that's right.
And I read in an article actually that it was a minor miracle that you were able to do what you did with 10 people. When did you know that it was time to start growing your team?
I knew, looking back at my prior experience, I think that's what helps a lot. So when we came out of Zynga, like it wasn't just that we learned kind of like, and even before Zynga, that we learned how to get people kind of how to build a compelling app experience through gaming in general, but also how to kind of what worked at Zynga. There's a lot of things that went wrong, obviously, but one of the things that did work was that they had an incredible bench of VP level folks, where a lot of times like the organization became a machine in that like it could run no matter what, basically. And so seeing our kind of very rapid growth and seeing that, it wasn't scalable for me to be in every meeting and to be in every single decision or part of the decision-making process really spurred me to kind of think about what went right at Zynga. And one of them was hiring a great group of VPs that would operate the business. And so for now, I like to think of myself as still an operator, of course, but also very much just a conductor of sorts. And like, I literally, the music would be terrible if I were playing it myself, or there would be no music actually, and so keeping that picture in my mind has been very helpful, and actually, obviously brought me to hire a good group of folks.
When you shared that you had that moment where you're like, you know what, I just can't be in every meeting anymore.
Yeah.
How did you let go of that?
It's hard, early on, because it is your kind of your baby of sorts, It literally, in our case, it literally hatched from my garage, and to really not be in that conversation, even when, even when some of the merchandisers came on board for me not to be that final decision maker on the daily kind of selection of assortment, it's hard, but then you also have to bring it back. You have to take a step back and think that if you think you found the right person and you're bullish on them, then in fact you would be doing a disservice if you continue to inject yourself in that process. Then why even hire that person? So I constantly remind myself that we hired what I thought was the best of the best, and that I need to trust them 100%. And in fact, if they don't perform, in some ways, it's largely a reflection of a mistake by me in selecting and interviewing some of these folks.
When you think about the individuals that you're bringing on and the grand vision for Boxed, what does the bigger picture look like to you?
I think it is being a retailer, not so much supplanting the physical brick and mortar retailers and really creating like something that's going to kill all brick and mortar retailers, right? I think brick and mortar retail is going to be around for a very, very long time, but it is solidifying our place where a younger audience might not think about brick and mortar retail first, especially maybe even not today, but think about in the next 5 to 10 years when the younger folks in our generation are going to start to have their own families, right? And so really solidifying our place within that overall ecosystem of retailers, and not so much supplanting every single brick and mortar retailer is how I see our vision. At the end of the day, it also is a function of us not carrying everything. Like we couldn't supplant all brick and mortar retail unless we want to carry everything. And so like that, it's also just a clear limiter on kind of what we can do. But with that said, though, I do and we are building a company for the long term. So what I want to be around to see is really like us being one of those retailers that like even my daughter would be proud to say that like my dad was involved with that thing, like 30 years later on.
Well, I think you make such a great point because this generation and the one upcoming so it's not that we're averse to going to the store, but I just don't understand why I would go to the store when I could that's the time that I have to take to drive there, walk in, and I have to walk all around because I can't find what I'm looking for versus just getting it on my phone. And that's what I love about your selection is right when the first time I opened the app, the stuff that I pulled up was relevant to me.
Yep. So we think about that a lot, right? Like, and there will always be the opposite subset, which probably would enjoy kind of walking into a store. And so, that's why I said, like, it's literally us kind of solidifying our place in that newer economy or that newer ecosystem of retailers.
As you work hard to do that, how do you set team milestones?
That's tough, especially because now, obviously as we get further and further along in the business, you have not only revenue targets, but also how do you kind of really keep the organization kind of functioning in terms of the org structure. It's been pretty difficult, and it's something that I would say I'm starting to spend a lot of time on. In fact, I wouldn't say the majority of my time just yet, but a lot of my time.
What are some resources that you're using to get better at that?
Reading, like I feel like it's absolutely. I find like in some ways it's very therapeutic. I like the books. I don't like traditional management books in that like when they, I definitely gravitate towards the books written by ex-founders or operators that basically don't tell you exactly how to run your business, but they basically kind of show you what happened to them and then how they thought about it. Case in point, Delivering Happiness by Tony Chieh. He walks you through, and it isn't until the last chapter of the book that he really talks about how he suggests you should run the organization of your business. Also, you look at Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Every time I think about like us, coming up to milestones or really kind of being in a tough situation, you read what that man went through, kind of building Opsware. It was, you tend to appreciate like kind of like everyone is going through something equally as difficult.
When it comes to management, I learned a great insight from my friend Manjal over at Health IQ.
Okay.
When he shared with me that people's psychology is so much more powerful when they feel like they're winning instead of feeling like they're behind. Specifically in the early days, when things weren't going like they are right now, how did you keep morale up?
That's tough sometimes. I still remember, and we talk about it all the time. There were 2 days after we launched that we received zero orders. Now it's like, every second, there's stuff just moving all the time. But on those 2 days, it was tough. And I actually got a phone call from one of our first employees saying that, like, are you sure this is going to work? Like, not a single person in this entire country ordered from us today. And then having that repeat 2 days later, it's gut check time, right? But the best advice that I have, and everyone should take it with a grain of salt, is I always think of myself as in certain time increments. And so whenever I feel like, and I tell this to the team too, whenever I feel like, kind of the vision's getting a little blurred, or that we're off course, or that it's kind of, the waters get a little murky, and like, do you want to go further into this mission? You have to think about kind of like 2 years ago, at least me 2 years ago, right? That person, that Chieh, thought that this would be a great idea. He saw something in terms of an opportunity and a vision, right? And so what would that guy say to me currently? And he'd probably say, I cannot believe you're even doubting yourself. Things are obviously progressing like well, and that keep marching. Like, what the hell are you doing? Even looking back, And so I tell our team that constantly, that sometimes whenever you think like, hey, is this going to work or is this not going to work? Think about the person like that joined Box on that first day, or decided to join Box over probably many other offers that you had. What would that person tell you? And so usually, luckily, everyone's been, you're right, let's keep marching forward. No one's been like, actually, that person probably tell me to turn the hell around. So we haven't had any of those yet, but who knows? Maybe we will in the future.
So part of the challenging part of the early days, and you mentioned that you guys were raising money, and in the big 2 years ago, the idea of me ordering something on my phone just wasn't as prevalent as it was now. So when you were pitching people, it's not that they don't believe you, but they're kind of like, how did you get through that?
Luckily, I think the good thing about being from Zynga was that, obviously we had a great ride. I still remember seeing Zynga trading at 16, we joined pre-IPO, seeing it trade intraday at $16 a share, and then, or close to like $15.90, and then trailing all the way down to like $1.90 intraday, and really seeing what mobile did to actually fairly entrenched businesses, and how powerful that switch was when it did happen. Starting from 2001, it was, even when the first game of Snake was on like your Nokia 8290, like it literally, the running joke in mobile was that, or gaming was that every year is the year of mobile gaming, And then when it was the year, it flipped so fast, so hard, and so violently that no one was prepared for it. And so you're starting to see that in commerce. Now, I think commerce, because there's physical moats to businesses and physical requirements, it won't switch as fast as something purely digital, but you are starting to see it happen in a very kind of accelerated pace. I would say a canary in the coal mine was just last Black Friday, when the majority of traffic for a lot of retailers was actually mobile for the first time. So you're already starting to see the signs of it.
What was one of the hardest questions that an investor asked you?
Ooh. That's tough. Like, for example, an early one was, how are you going to figure out the logistics? It's tough to say, because it's kind of like, it's only trust at that point, right? We had zero experience with moving packages around the country. And when they asked that, you can obviously say the right things, but it's a tough question, because you also have to really convince them that you can execute on that. And so that was a very, very difficult, always a difficult topic for us when we first started. Luckily, I spend most of my time actually on operations. And so I spent a lot of time in our warehouses. And now I would say that's actually a core strength of ours, is actually logistics and how we move packages around the country. So even now, I would say 90+% of our packages arrive in 2 business days or less. Wow. And that's for 90+% of our customers. So going from walk into the UPS store to figuring out how to do this at a scalable level. It's been a very tough crash course.
That's exactly like something you've said previously where in the gaming world you had a playbook, you knew what worked, you're very experienced. You came to start this, there's zero playbook.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
Terrifying but refreshing at the same time. I think as kind of Zynga was the pioneer of mobile gaming or just social gaming in general, and so they were writing that playbook. That now even today you look at kind of how a lot of games are set up. They're based on things that kind of Zynga pioneered years ago, and now it's terrifying that there's no playbook for us, but that also creates a huge opportunity. It means that no one else has figured it out either, right? There's no dominant mobile consumer packaged good retailer in America, And so that means like everyone's figuring it out right now. So I guess the best things in life are equally terrifying and equally kind of rewarding, right? So I guess that's what keeps me going.
So another insight from my friend Manjal is the Godzilla question when you're in an investor meeting. And this is when someone says, what if X big player, Google, Amazon, Facebook, launches this tomorrow?
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Because I know initially people are like, well, Amazon exists. Why is someone going to go to Boxed?
Yep. So I think if someone does that, then you're obviously doing something right. So it's probably a decent problem, decent situation that you're in. If a very large company needs to really kind of go after you and own your exact space, it means at least you pick the right space, right? That other people feel the need to crowd in on it. But for us, I think we always kind of keep in mind that you look at retail in the history of the U.S. No single retailer has ever dominated all of commerce, whether economically or whether because of mind share or whether even legislatively. There's always been healthy competition in our country. And so keeping that in mind and thinking that, wow, commerce online is getting to the point where it's so big that you have public companies like Wayfair, Zulily, and several other retailers kind of breaking out, that there is space for other public companies to exist, even in a world where Amazon dominates online retail.
So in terms of fundraising, I know we were recent Series B at the beginning of this year. Two of your big goals were fulfillment centers and increasing the assortment of goods. How are those going?
So with that, I think we can always move faster. No matter how fast we're moving, I'm never satisfied. I think we can only move faster. As a technology company, you're constantly just trying to stay ahead of technology, right? Like the minute you stay,
it's not an easy task.
Exactly. The minute you stay kind of flat or don't make progress, you're actually taking steps backwards. If you believe technology is always moving forward. So with that said, I think we were very fast in scaling up our third warehouse, which is in Georgia, Atlanta, and then also increasing assortment. Now there's over 1,000 items, and so we can always get better, and I want to get better. But looking back, I would say maybe I'm not angry at the Chieh from December 2014, but at least I would be like, all right, we made some progress.
What was the most impactful or eye-opening lesson you learned from raising money?
Wow. In terms of the process or what someone said to me?
Both. I mean,
okay. Great interview question, Jenna. I think that's the best answer to a question is like both. Tell me both. I think the biggest eye-opening experience was how polarizing and how much of a dichotomy of a thought there has been in commerce, online commerce. You have people that are very bullish and believe that there is going to be other public companies that will occur within commerce, and there's other folks that believe the history of online commerce has already been written. It's very polarizing, and the dichotomy is very, very clearly drawn. So I would say that's the most eye-opening thing for me. If you look at gaming at the time when we entered gaming, everyone was pretty much, even if you didn't believe in the future of online gaming, at least you weren't completely bearish or kind of like on it. And so, but in commerce, it's really kind of, one or the other. I would also say probably uh, the most impactful thing that someone um, said to me, I guess, was basically, I would say it wasn't even directly from an investor. It was someone that I met along the kind of road, and basically said, actually, he's from a very large retailer, and so basically told me like, listen, like, don't believe don't believe any supposed experts in your space. There are none, and that everyone's figuring it out. And if they believe if there's an end all be all solution to your problem, then there would already be a dominant online wholesaler or a dominant online purveyor of consumer packaged goods. And clearly there is not today. And so clearly someone hasn't figured out all the pieces. And so I think that was the most impactful.
I like that.
One of us. Yeah, it was pretty interesting to hear that, and from someone from a very large retailer as well.
All right, Chieh, so I want to spend the last couple of minutes
Sure.
chatting about your decision to help the families of the employees who are working at Box to go to college. Tell me about what motivated you. Go back to that night in Atlanta when not everyone could come to the company event because they didn't have cars, and then take me to where you decided you were going to help them pay for their kids to go to college.
Well, the update is I recently went to Atlanta, and actually a lot of them can afford cars now. So that was huge for me, and seeing a lot of them drive to work now because we pay a pretty decent wage. I would say by any stretch of the imagination in our facilities, and so that was awesome, But you're right. The genesis of the idea was basically from a visit down there when we first started. So, originally I had thought that like folks just didn't like me wearing a plaid shirt around the warehouse. Who the hell does that? And so I realized, obviously a lot of them couldn't afford cars, and so I thought to myself, like, that's not a way to run businesses. A business is like to have such to have folks that are struggling financially still work for you, and how could you like tell them your vision with a straight face when you have that exist within your company, right? So I thought, what could we do for these folks? So we already pay a very good wage. Even if we double their wage, like, I don't think it would be a trajectory mover in terms of the trajectory of their upward mobility and their families. And so I thought, what made a difference in my life? Because like when my parents came to this country, we had very little, if nothing, and so what made a difference for me, and for me at least, I can only say what I experienced, that was education. And so I thought about it. Education is pretty expensive these days. And I thought about what is it that I can do long-term for these folks that can really help them, and that's paying for that education. And people often say, how are you ever going to afford it? But if you look at kind of our vision and how long we think we'll be around for, if you take any of those public company retailers or public retailers, and you rewind back to when the company was founded, 18 months into that journey, had the founders set aside a significant portion of their stock, they can pay for more than their fair share of college educations, and that's really, one, it helps the folks all around the company, but also it helps align everyone's vision that this is a long path that we're all going to have to walk together.
I think it's huge, especially because it's not just certain colleges. It's any college for 4 years, public or private. So you just went all in.
All in, yeah, basically. And actually, it's coming up pretty soon too. Our first recipient of that tuition program is, or the tuition money is going to college in September. So it's all in. Yeah, there's no walking it back now.
When you got those initial, hugely positive reactions from your team, how did you feel?
Not terrible. I felt good, and I felt like it was the galvanizing moment for us as a company. I really did. That people, realized that wow, this guy, he says it all the time, but this guy really believes in a long-term vision for this company, or else he wouldn't do this. I think walking the walk, as some would say, really helped kind of solidify that feeling across the company. And I would say that's been very important.
One of my favorite things about learning about that initiative that you started was seeing the outpouring of your investors all saying how proud they were to work with you. And one of the individuals, Jeff Richards over at GGV, said this is classic Chieh. He's always had a big focus on Boxed being a unique place to work. Chieh, when somebody says, I work at Boxed, what do you want that to mean?
I want it to mean that this is not my 9 to 5. It's actually, it's part of my life's work. Not me, like mine, but whomever has joined us. Is that, when I, eventually if we are a public company, when we look at kind of I always say whether we push the button or ring the bell, when we're looking up at that sign, I'm not going to say, wow, I built this,
It was all me.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be the folks surrounding me that we all built this, which is true. Like they couldn't have done it themselves. I sure as hell can't do it myself. And that it was a true group effort. And that, and really, if we're successful in that, I really think for everyone in our company today, and even in the next few years, I would say you would look up at that sign and say, wow, that is an important part of my life's work, is that like building this company. And so that's kind of what I think.
I love it. So what's one question, personal, professional, athletic, that you've always wanted to be asked, but you've never been asked?
That I've never been asked, that I want to be asked. Well, I can't dunk, so that's don't ask that. I don't even know. Yeah, I think I still touch the net, so that's
I can't
that's
even
good.
get close.
I don't know. It would have to be that I've never been asked.
Doesn't have to be professional.
It would be I think no one's actually ever asked me like how I even like spend my weekends or how do I balance it all, And I think the answer is that I'm not very good at it. So maybe that's why I've been glad that no one's ever asked. And so it's been a very tough ride in that obviously it's a very difficult business that in a difficult market that we've kind of taken on. So it takes a lot of time, actually, which is probably true for any business. But really trying to get better at it and really trying to separate work and family has been a huge challenge for me. So in some ways, I would, not that I would answer the question with a question, but I would answer it with a question mark because I really don't have the answer. I guess that's part of the journey of life, right? Like
figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. And like I'm not good at everything I try, and I sure as hell I'm not good at balancing work life, right now, but I sure as hell will try pretty damn hard to make it right.
So that makes for one last question then.
How
do you spend your weekends?
So really, I actually, and you're gonna laugh, or you probably folks out there would think that I'm the boringest person in the world, but I do usually at least once a weekend. Like one of the days on the weekend, I'm actually in the warehouse, and so because we do run 7 days. I like showing my face and showing that you guys aren't the only folks that are working on the weekends. And hey, I'm here with you, and that I'm not just sitting at home with my feet up on the weekends. So there's that. But I also like to I don't turn my phone off, but I definitely put it aside in another room and make it family time. And every once in a while, I'll actually leave the house without my phone. So just to really live it on the edge, just to really kind of show my family that I'm dead. That's my time to them and I'm dedicated to it.
I love it, Chieh. There's so much about Box that I love that even just the way you run the company is so much more than the convenience you're bringing, which I'm still excited about because I'm going to save $7 on plastic bags. But I appreciate so much you taking the time. How can everyone start using Boxed and stay up to date with what you guys are working on?
So much like how most other folks use Box, and so the vast majority of our customers shop via our mobile app. And so I know like we own the .com, but like I would say it's the overwhelming majority. And so Google Play, App Store, download the app and then give us a try. And I think you'll like what you find.
And you guys are Boxed Wholesale on Twitter, right?
That's right. So Boxed Wholesale on Twitter. Yeah.
Perfect.
We should grab Boxed, but we'll work on it.
Thank you so much, Chieh.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks, everyone.